It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
Guys, gals, everything in between. Today is Saturday, June 6, 2020. Welcome to a weekend edition of today's top news and headlines. Brought to you by myself, Mavakaga, and my co-host Kai. We'll be covering all kinds of headlines and topics tonight from all over the world, wherever you may be. Hope everybody's doing good. Hope everybody's staying safe, protecting yourself, protecting the family, taking care of one another, taking care of each other. Peace and love, peace and love. The show will begin in about a minute's time. For now, pull up a seat, grab a coffee, sit back, and enjoy. Mavakaga exclusive once again. Today's top news and headlines, Saturday, June 6, 2020.
It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
All right, everybody, welcome. Show's about to begin. Just waiting on Kai. Kai, if you are ready, it's time to get the show on the road. Let's roll.
Rights group says Thai dissident was abducted from the street in front of his apartment. A Thai dissident has been abducted in Cambodia, a human rights group said Friday, raising concern that a mysterious campaign targeting exiles for disappearance or death may have been revived. Armed men snatched Wachaliam Sazaksit off the street in front of his apartment in the Cambodian capital. Human Rights Watch said Friday, citing witnesses and a security video at the building, he was then bundled into a black cart that drove away. Cambodia denied any abduction had taken place and said no investigation was planned. An arrest warrant issued in 2018 alleged Wachaliam violated the Computer Crime Act by operating a Facebook page. The rights group said, at that time, senior Thai police officers vowed to bring Wachaliam back to Thailand one way or another, a statement said. Somyot Prusaka Semuk, an activist from the same political circle, who spent 7 years in prison for the crime of insulting the monarchy, gave the Associated Press a second-hand account of Thursday's incident. Somyot said Wachaliam was talking on his phone and walking to buy snacks at a nearby mini-mart when he was abducted. The other person on the phone called, heard noises, a commotion, man speaking possibly in a foreign language, and Wachaliam said saying he couldn't breathe, according to Somyot, who heard the account from the second person on the cell phone. She said a friend of Wachaliam saw security camera footage of armed men taking Wachaliam into a black car. At least 8 Thai exiles were abducted in Laos in 2016 to 2018, and the bodies of several were later found floating in the Mekong River. Those disappearances raised suspicions they had been kidnapped by a death squad either officially or vigilantes sanctioned. The victims were associated with the red shirt political movement that staged aggressive street protests in Bangkok in 2010 that were violently crushed by the military. From exile, they had continued propagating anti-government statements mostly over the internet. Thailand's government and military have denied involvement in the disappearance in Laos. Thailand was ruled by the military from a 2014 army coup until last year, when elections installed a government headed by the same former army commander who staged the coup and led the military regime. A Cambodian police spokesperson denied any knowledge of Wacha Liam being kidnapped and said since no abduction had taken place, no investigation would be done. Since this morning, I've received about 50 calls asking me about this news, but replying to them all the same. I said this is fake news, untrue news. General Chakai Kim Conan said. Human Rights Watch had called for an urgent investigation. While some Thai dissidents managed to obtain political asylum in Western countries, others who lacked connections, documentation, and funds were stuck after fleeing to Laos and Cambodia. Some tried to keep doing political work over the internet, while others preferred to keep a low profile. All live in limbo because of the transactional nature of Thailand's relations with its neighbors, whom I regard as advantageous to hand over fugitives.
Black teen shares the rules his mom makes him following when leaving the house. In the wake of protests against police brutality, Cameron Welch, an 18-year-old, shared a video on TikTok listing all the instructions he has to follow when he goes out. By the age of 11, Cameron Welch had memorized the list of warnings his mom had given to him through the years whenever he was walking out the door. Don't put your hands in your pockets. Don't put your hoodie on. Don't be outside without a shirt on. Check in with your people even if you're down the street. A week ago, the 18-year-old from Houston shared the list on a powerful TikTok video that now has over 10.4 million views. Just some unwritten rules my mom makes me follow as a young black man. #Black Lives Matter, Welch wrote in the caption. The checklist Welch recites is extensive, covering everything from how to behave in a store so a shop clerk won't accuse you of stealing clothes you shouldn't wear while driving if you don't want to be pulled over by the police. The list goes on with don't put your hands in your pockets, don't put your hoodie on, don't be outside without a shirt on, check in with your people even if you're down the street, don't be out too late, don't touch anything you're not buying, never leave the store without a receipt or a bag, even if it's just a pack of gum. Never make it look like there's an altercation between you and someone else. Never leave the house without your ID. Don't drive with a wife beater on. Don't drive with a do-rag on. Don't go out in public with a wife beater or a do-rag. Don't ride with the music too loud. Don't stare at a Caucasian woman. If a cop stops you randomly and starts questioning you, don't talk back, just compromise. If you ever get pulled over, put your hands on the dashboard and ask if you can get your license and registration out. Welch said that hearing about George Floyd's death at the hands of Minneapolis police last week pushed him to speak out and share what it's like to live with such a heightened awareness of the police. In this moment in our country, it was necessary for me to use my voice, so I put out the video. I wanted people to hear and understand the real truth of a black man's daily experience. In the comments under the TikTok post, many black and Latino teens said they'd memorized similar checklists from years of being lectured by their parents. Parents raising black children commented too. Saving this video for my future son, one TikTok user told Welch. His future shouldn't be like this, Welch wrote back. In another recent video, Welch talks about how his friends don't say, "I'll see you later," after hanging out at each other's houses and heading home. Instead, they say, "Stay safe." Every black man has a feeling of, "Am I going to come home today?" he says in the clip. Welch said he hopes the viral videos open more people's eyes to the unfair reality of everyday life for so many black Americans. "I want people to see that we need change and that no one should have to have a life like this."
A model helped design the line of face masks for hijab-wearing frontline workers. Halima Aden and female-founded AI tech company Anywhere teamed up to create a collection of matching face coverings, hijabs, and turbans. Anywhere launched the Banding Together project, a line of headbands made with buttons for healthcare workers, in partnership with Allure. Aiden's particular set retails for $45 and comes with a hijab and face covering that was designed with a built-in extender to clasp comfortably behind the head, according to the product description. The company Aiden teamed up was founded by Emily Shipp, a New York City-based journalist, and Eddie Lee Cohen, a former product and design company owner in Israel. Shipp told Insider via email that the collaboration with the model was an obvious thought for the brand. When the pandemic first started, Halima had posted on her Instagram how she used to work in hospital cleaning and her support and admiration of all frontline workers. A main pillar of our startup and values is inclusivity. Shipp stated. Inclusivity. Halima, having formerly worked in the hospital and the platform and values, made the collaboration a no-brainer. For every set sold, another will be donated to hospitals in need. Each face cover, hijab, and turban is made from organic fabrics, and they are machine washable and reusable. The face masks with the buttons are also available to purchase on their own for $40. Eden worked at St. Cloud, Minnesota hospital cleaning patients' room, even after her modeling career took off, which is why this collaboration was so important to her. As many hijab-wearing women are working at healthcare facilities, I wanted to make sure they have a comfortable option for wearing a mask while keeping their hair covered. It can also get hot running around at pace healthcare employees are right now, so a breathable fabric was a must, Eden said in a statement shared with Insider. The hijab and turban sets are both available in 7 different colors. I really wanted the pieces to give a feeling of tranquility and calm, so I went with soft shades that bring a feeling of peace, Eden said. She added, "Like everyone, my livelihood has been turned upside down. I just keep reminding myself of something that my mom always says. Hard times don't last, but strong people do."
A cop was filmed telling armed white men to avoid arrest so we don't look like we're playing favorites. The video of the officer warning armed white men who were protecting a store has prompted a public apology from the chief of police in Salem, Oregon. The police chief in Salem, Oregon, has apologized after a viral video showed one of his officers telling a group of armed white men protecting a store to shelter inside to avoid being arrested for violating a curfew so officers don't look like they're playing favorites. "We're going to really enforce the citywide curfew shutdown so we can arrest anybody walking around," the unidentified officer tells the men. "My command wanted me to come talk to you guys and request that you guys secrete people inside their businesses or in your vehicles somewhere where it's not a violation, so we don't look like we're playing favorites." He adds that would be unhealthy. A clip of the encounter uploaded to TikTok went viral after it was shared on Twitter. The person who made the TikTok, Danny Green, 20, said she did not film the video but saw it posted on Facebook and wanted to share a clip on platforms where she believed younger audience would see it. I didn't think what they were doing was right, and I wanted more people my age to see that, both locally and nationally, she said. In a longer clip posted to Facebook, which said the incident occurred on Monday night, the same officer can be heard telling white men he and his fellow officers had really appreciated the attitude you guys have all had. One of the men can then be heard telling his fellow armed men to get off the streets. If they let us be out here, he says, then people will say we can be out here. The video also shows the same officer explaining the curfew law to the men and warning them there would be soon a heavy presence of police in the area. The video was filmed outside Glamour Salon, a local business that became an Oregon flashpoint when its owner, Lindsey Graham, defied the coronavirus lockdown orders last month to reopen and was subsequently fined. Graham, 39, said she had posted on social media over the weekend asking for men to protect her store because she had heard it would be targeted by vandals in retaliation for her defiance of the coronavirus lockdown. But she rejected the term armed militia. I didn't call for an army to come outside my salon, she said. I called for men to come protect my salon from rioters and looters. I'm seeing online that I called white supremacists to come defend my salon. I'm being called a racist and a white supremacist myself. I'm absolutely not a racist or a white supremacist. I would never willingly associate with people who are. She added, it was not my intention to involve myself in any kind of racist activity. In a video shared on Thursday, Salem Police Chief Jerry Moore said his department had received multiple emails and calls about the video of the officer. The message we have received is a concern that we are treating people differently. For that I tell you I am sorry, he said. Sorry that there is even a thought that this department would treat someone different than others. Moore declined to name the officer, and the department did not respond to requests for comment for this story. However, the police chief said the officer had been spoken to. The impact the interactions captured on the video had our community has been discussed with the officer, he said. Unfortunately, he had not been fully briefed about enforcement of the curfew before he spoke with the group. Moving forward, all officers tasked with the enforcement of the curfew will be properly educated before deployment. Graham, the salon owner, said she had only seen the video of the incident involving the officer once, but believed the officer was not doing anything wrong. The chief of police should not have to defend himself for an officer enforcing the law and telling people he's going to enforce the law, she said. She said she believed the officer was not demonstrating favoritism and that protesters had been warned via megaphone to obey the curfew. It's hard for me to have an unbiased opinion on the matter because I don't approve of people videotaping the police to try to put them in a compromising position, she said. To disrespectfully stand there to try to manipulate a situation to make them look bad when they're dealing with a lot right now. Green, the person who shared the video on TikTok, said the chief's response had angered both the left and right in Salem. It honestly made me more mad, she said, because he was just making really weak excuses and didn't take any action. Guys, gals, and everything in between, if you like these videos, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you are new here, and please hit that bell icon so you'll be notified each and every time we make new releases.
Al-Qaeda leader in Islamic Maghreb killed by French military. French military forces killed the leader of an Al-Qaeda North America affiliate during an operation in Mali, France said Friday. Armed Forces Minister Florence Parly announced over Twitter the death of Abdelmalek Drodal and several of his associates. On June the 3rd, French army forces, with the support of their local partners, killed Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb's Abdelmalek Drodal and several of his closest collaborators during an operation in northern Mali, she tweeted. Parley also announced the May 19 capture of Mohammed Mrabat, whom she called a veteran militant who served in a senior role for the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. The group has been inactive in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. She said the operations dealt a severe blow to terrorist groups in the region. Drogda was a key militant fighter who has been the subject of a years-long manhunt. His group, Islamic Maghreb, known as AQIM, was part of an Islamic militant takeover of Mali before French troops intervened in 2013. The group made millions from kidnapping foreigners for ransom and made large parts of West Africa too dangerous for aid groups. Also known as Abu Musab Abdul Wadud, Drogda fought in Algeria civil war in the 1990s and rose to prominence as the top emir of the main Algerian insurgency movement in 2004. He later transformed the Salafist group for call and combat, known as the GSPC, into Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, spreading the movement across Africa's Sahel region under the umbrella of the Global Terror Network. As a top Al-Qaeda leader, he commanded affiliates in North Africa. The Islamic group operates in northern Mali, Niger, Algeria. He was believed to be hiding in the mountains of northern Algeria. The French military numbers about 5,200 in the region and intervened after jihadist militants captured parts of northern Mali. The territory has since been recaptured, but violence has spread to neighboring countries, creating insecurity in the region, the BBC reported.
Don't be fooled by China's support of the Black Lives Matter movement. The protests across the United States triggered by the killing of George Floyd in police custody have inspired a wave of demonstrations around the globe. Protesters in Australia, Brazil, Germany, the United Kingdom, and many other countries are gathering en masse to denounce racism and police violence in the United States. Amid this global support for the U.S. Black Lives Matter movement is an unusual new ally, the Chinese government. The People's Daily, the Chinese Communist Party's mouthpiece, published a cartoon portraying a White House tainted in blood and covered in tear gas. Standing on top of it is a crumbling Statue of Liberty, revealing her true identity as a police officer who kneeled on Floyd's neck and now faces murder charges for suffocating him to death. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Zhao Lijiang, told reporters in a press conference, "The current situation reflects once more the severity of the problems of racism and police violence in the U.S." Another bellicose spokesperson, Hua Xiangyang, known for her aggressive pushback against foreign criticism of China's handling of the coronavirus outbreak, Uyghur concentration camps, and brutal police violence against Hong Kong protesters, joined the international outcry over Floyd's death by tweeting, "I can't breathe." Beijing's criticism of the United States, however, differs from that seen around the globe. China's critique does not stem from a genuine concern for universal human rights and the well-being of African Americans. The Chinese people have not been given any opportunity to protest in solidarity with Americans or against the abuses of black residents in China itself. Anti-black racism remains rampant on the Chinese internet, untouched by censors who seek to crush opinions the government dislikes. Its motivation is simply to tell the United States and everybody else to stop criticizing China over its own human rights abuses. Underneath Beijing's commentary on the U.S. unrest is a deeply cynical voice that asks, if the U.S. authorities can do it, why shouldn't we? Last Friday afternoon, Trump held a press conference to denounce China's plan to devise a national security law to crack down on Hong Kong's dissents. He threatened to end the U.S. recognition of Hong Kong's special trading status and to sanction Chinese officials hurting Hong Kong's freedom. It is going to bring real damage to Chinese companies and wealthy elites who have been using Hong Kong as a backdoor to gain access to foreign capital, sensitive technology, and channels to relocate their wealth overseas. That night after Trump's speech, major cities across the United States were engulfed in flames, National Guards were mobilized, and protesters clashed with riot police near the White House. The president reportedly hid briefly in a bunker. The Chinese authorities have been heavily criticized for their crackdown on Hong Kong protests, for the Uyghur concentration camps, and for the arrest of rights lawyers. Beijing must be delighted to see the U.S. global reputation tarnished as its problems of racism and police brutality are brought into the spotlight. It would be surprising if Beijing did not seize the moment to criticize the double standards of the White House. This cynicism underlines Beijing's response to criticism of its bullying behavior in the international arena. When an international tribunal in The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines against Chinese claims of sovereignty over the South China Sea in 2016, Beijing made it clear it would not abide by the ruling. It pointed out that the United States violated international law all the time and, hypocritically, hadn't even acceded to the relevant UN convention itself. Such rhetoric has grown common over the last few decades, as the Chinese Communist Party gradually abandoned its appeal for a more just social system and world order. Instead, the party has become increasingly explicit in referring to the global domination by Western powers as a license for its own imperial ambition. Zhang Shigong, an influential official scholar who advises the Chinese government on Hong Kong policy and global governance, even wrote recently that China should absorb the skills and achievements of the British and American empires to construct its own world empire for the sake of the Chinese people and the world. For those in the United States and elsewhere who aspire for more equality, justice, and liberty, it is a mistake to see Beijing as an exotic progressive force with which to ally. Beijing points to the violence and injustice of the United States to exonerate itself from its own egregious violence and injustices. Police brutality and racism in the United States are unimaginably horrific, but U.S. authorities today are not using these protests as an excuse to arrest dissenting legislators and professors, to wholly outlaw peaceful assembly and rights organizations, to pressure companies and universities to fire employees sympathetic with the protesters, to arrest police for criticizing the government on social media, or to lock up 1 million minorities in re-education camps. These abuses are routine in China and becoming routine in Hong Kong. Perhaps global anti-racist protesters should take this opportunity to educate Beijing that the global support for Hong Kong protesters last year and the world's denunciation of Uyghur concentration camps do emanate from a genuine passion for universal human rights instead of some malicious intent to hold back China, an accusation that Beijing often levels against its critics. Global civil society criticizes the U.S. authorities as much as the Chinese government when either inflicts violence and racism against its people. This is the polar opposite of a double standard. We are increasingly living in a world where competing bullies who emulate one another in bad behaviors domestically and internationally. To stop this race to the bottom in rights and justices, we should stand together to hold all bullies to the same standard of scrutiny, not letting them take advantage of others' embarrassment to advance their repression.
Buffalo mayor says 75-year-old man pushed to ground was agitator as it says he won't be firing cops. Byron Brown, the mayor of Buffalo, NY, said Friday the 75-year-old man who was shoved to ground by 2 cops the previous day was an agitator who had been asked to leave the area numerous times. The officers have been suspended without pay. An internal affairs investigation launched after the incident was caught on video and showed a man, Martin Gugino, bleeding on the sidewalk. Governor Andrew Cuomo said the video made him sick to my stomach. The officers were expected to be charged with assault Saturday morning, according to WKBW Buffalo. Gugino was caught on camera being shoved to the ground by officers in tactical gear shortly after a curfew went into effect near Niagara Square. In the video, Gugino can be seen approaching a large group of officers. Someone is heard shouting, "Push him back." One officer raises his baton over the man while another pushes him in the chest. He stumbled backwards and falls on the pavement. A pool of blood can be seen slowly forming around his head. Although Brown was shifted to suspend the officers, the action prompted a backlash from the police emergency response team, with 57 officers resigning in support of their colleagues. What we were informed of is what that individual was an agitator. He was trying to spark up the crowd of people. Those people were there into the darkness. Our concern is when it gets dark, there is potential for violence, Brown said. There has been vandalism. There have been fires set. There have been stores broken into and looted. According to what was reported to me, that individual was a key major instigator of people engaging in those activities, the mayor said. Brown said he would not insist that the two cops be fired because they need to get due process. When asked about the 57 members who resigned from the team, he said the city had contingency plans and assured the residents that Buffalo would be safe this weekend. I want people out in our community peacefully protesting to know everyone who is peacefully protesting will be protected, he said. Cuomo revealed Friday he had spoken to the victim, a longtime peace activist from Amherst. The governor praised the shift suspension of the officers, but pressed for a disciplinary action against them. I think the city should pursue firing, Cuomo said, and I think the district attorney should look at the situation for possible criminal charges. The Erie County District Attorney's Office announced earlier in the day that it will be investigating the incident.
More scary than coronavirus. South Korea's health alerts expose private lives. Back when the number of coronavirus cases in South Korea exceeded 6,000, there was a rise too in complaints about information overload in the form of emergency virus text alerts that have included embarrassing revelations about infected people's private lives. Health authorities and district offices across the country are sending safety guidance texts from early morning to late at night, reminding people to wash their hands thoroughly and not to touch their faces with unwashed hands. But for many people, the texts, while intended as a public health service, are fueling social stigma and in some cases leading to speculation over extramarital affairs. Much of the criticism centers on messages that trace the movements of people who have recently been diagnosed with the virus. A woman in her 60s has just tested positive, reads a typical text. Click on the link for the places she visited before she was hospitalized, it adds. Clicking on the link takes the user to the website of a district office that lists the places the patient has visited before testing positive. This avalanche of information has included some embarrassing revelations. One involved a man in his 50s who returned from Wuhan, province in China, where the outbreak started, with his 30-year-old secretary. Both were infected in the early days of the epidemic. In another case, one alert said a man contracted the virus from an instructor during a sexual harassment class. As South Korea media poured over their movements, citizens looked on with a mixture of horror and fascination as their private lives were laid bare, leading to speculation that they were having an affair and that the secretary had undergone plastic surgery. In another text that captured people's imagination, a woman in her 60s reportedly went to work as normal, attended a wedding, and had a lunch at a hotel buffet restaurant with friends, despite having been recently hospitalized with injuries she said she had sustained in a car accident. The woman, who then tested positive for COVID-19, was accused by South Korean internet users of committing insurance fraud, allegations she denied publicly after TV reporters managed to track her down. A man in his 30s who tested positive became the target of online taunts about his sexual behavior after authorities said in a text alert that they had been unable to track his movements after he arrived at Seoul's main railway station from the capital's airport. Since the area near the station is known for prostitution, the man, known only by his case number, was repeatedly accused of on online forums of paying for sex. In fact, he had simply eaten at a restaurant in the neighborhood, health authorities said, blaming the earlier confusion over his whereabouts on a technical glitch. The text alerts are also affecting shops and restaurants that infected people visited before their diagnosis was confirmed. While the texts do not identify the patients, other than giving their gender, age range, and assigning them a case number, they do reveal the names of shops and restaurants they visited before they were tested. While restaurants that had been named closed temporarily for fumigation, they say their association with the virus could put them out of business. Fraudsters are now playing on those fears. A man claiming to be infected with COVID-19 called several restaurants in the Mapo district of Seoul, warning that their business would suffer if he told health authorities he had eaten there, and demanded money in return for his silence. Police are investigating the case but have yet to locate the suspect. I find myself eavesdropping on customers' conversations these days just in case they turn out to be a cult member or a fraudster, said Kim Na-hee, the owner of a restaurant in the capital. Most of South Korea's cases have been linked to the Shincheonji Church of Jesus, a religious sect. Kim added, "I thought I only had to protect my health, but now I think there are other things more scary than the coronavirus."
China does start hunting alien life from September with 500-meter radio telescope. Ever since humans have gotten serious about space, one big question has always been on our mind. Are we alone in the universe? And researchers have been constantly on the lookout for signs for aliens. And China's newest telescope will attempt to do just that. China's 500-meter aperture spherical telescope, or FAST, will begin looking for alien signs, signals in September, according to State Media Science and Technology Daily. This telescope was showcased to the world in January. However, since then, it has been going through some upgrades that will help it reduce interference and boost its search capabilities. It is expected to be fully functional by September this year. According to China Tech City, apart from helping humanity find extraterrestrial life in the universe, the telescope will also collect data in order to study a wide range of cosmological phenomena, including black holes, gas clouds, or other distant galaxies. The telescope is around 500 meters in diameter. However, it is important to know that it only focuses a 300-meter segment on the receiver at a given time. Once ready, it will be able to scan twice the sky area covered by the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, which was until now the record holder for the largest single aperture radio telescope in the world. It was first proposed in the year 1994, with the funding getting approved sometime in 2007. The entire cost for building this was around $207 million. The telescope is made using 4,500 36-foot triangular panels that form the dish-like structure. Suspended on top, it is a 33-ton retina device at a height between 460 feet and 525 feet. The telescope is built in the Pingtan County in the southwestern province of Guizhou. For constructing this, a village of 65 people was completely uprooted, while also relocating over 9,000 people in surrounding villages. Li Di, chief scientist from the National Astronomical Observatory, said in a statement, "Ultimately, exploring the unknown is the nature of mankind," he said in an interview with China Daily. "It drives us to a greater future."
New York police officer shot dead while sitting in police car during chaos. An off-duty New York City police officer was killed early Wednesday after a gunman walked up to a police vehicle and fired one round through a window, authorities said. Officer Miosotis Familia, a 12-year veteran assigned to the New York City Police Department's 46th Precinct's Anti-Crime Unit, was taken to St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx, where she was pronounced dead at 3:37 a.m. Eastern. She was 48 years old, according to police sources. At a press conference Wednesday morning, New York City Police Commissioner James O'Neill said Familia was shot in the head in an unprovoked attack while sitting with her partner in a marked police command vehicle on the corner of Morris Avenue and East 183rd Street in the Bronx around 12:30 a.m. He told reporters the vehicle had been parked there since March because of increased gang activity in the area. Familia's partner radioed for assistance while other uniformed officers chased after the suspect, who took off on foot. As the officers confronted the suspect, he drew a revolver and the officers shot and killed him, according to O'Neill. The shooter has since been identified as Alexander Bonds, 34, of New York City. The .38 caliber revolver recovered from the crime scene was stolen in West Virginia in 2013. Another person believed to be an innocent bystander was struck by a bullet during the confrontation. The individual was hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. Familia's partner was not injured in the attack. It is clear this was an unprovoked attack on police officers who were assigned to keep the people of this great city safe, O'Neill told reporters at St. Barnabas Hospital. She was sitting in the vehicle, and he came up and fired a round into the vehicle. I don't know if anything else could be more unprovoked than that. O'Neill noted that the area where the shooting took place has been troubled by gun violence and gang activity. He later wrote on his verified Twitter account that Familia was assassinated. A police source told ABC News that surveillance footage recovered from the scene shows the suspect purposefully walking up to the command vehicle and firing into the passenger's side window. Familia was writing in her memo book at the time, indicating that she may not have seen the suspect approach, police sources said. In an internal memo to staff, O'Neill wrote that Familia's death was a direct attack on police officers assigned to safeguard the people of New York City, and that she was murdered for her uniform and for the responsibility she embraced. For nearly 12 years, Officer Familia did what each of you also swore an oath to do every day, on every tour: fight crime and disorder, and improve people's lives, O'Neill wrote. Officer Familia dutifully lived up to that promise because she believed, as each of you do, that the safest big city in the nation can become even safer.
Race for 6G. South Korea and China off to early lead. Japan plays catch-up via infrastructure, and US tries to gain ground with chips. As fifth-generation wireless networks start to go mainstream, competition to develop 6G has begun, with Samsung Electronics and Huawei Technologies at the forefront, especially in the base stations that will form the backbone of future networks. Those companies provide leadership to South Korea and China, respectively. Japan aims to play catch-up, while the US desperately pushes to regain leadership in innovation. Work to standardize technological specifications for sixth-generation networks is expected to begin around 2023. That move likely will kickstart development of equipment and parts ahead of anticipated commercialization around 2027. South Korea and China, home to global manufacturers of mobile phones, base stations, and electronic parts, are tapping the expertise of these companies and aim to take the lead in setting 6G tech standards through public-private effort. South Korea seeks to become the first country to launch 6G commercial services, with Samsung and LG Electronics setting up research centers and Seoul considering a 976 billion won, that's approximately $800 million development project. Beijing unveiled a research and development program in November, while Huawei debuted a research team. Base stations are expected to undergo a transformation in terms of quality and quantity with 6G, which likely will support speeds of more than 1 terabit per second, or over 10 times faster than 5G. But in terms of range, the transmission distance of 6G base stations will only be 200 meters or less. This means we will need base stations 10 times the population, said Tetsuya Kawanishi, professor at Waseda University in Tokyo. Japan has about 600,000 base stations, he said, projecting that 6G will require 1 billion nationwide and up to 100 billion globally. While current base stations are roughly the size of a refrigerator, 6G networks will use shorter wavelengths and therefore require smaller antennas, so the stations can be as small as mobile handsets. Even lighting equipment, signs, and passenger cars may play the role of a base station. Base stations also are expected to act as servers and process data at high speeds. Ultra-fast communication will be available even in remote areas, facilitating collection of big data. Businesses are seeking ways to develop such smart stations to gain leadership in the race. 3 players control roughly 80% of the current base station market: the rapidly rising Huawei, Sweden's Ericsson, and Nokia of Finland, IHS Markit says. Europe intends to work on developing standards with the Third Generation Partnership Project, a collaboration of standards, organization, and others. President Donald Trump wants the U.S. on the front line of 6G tech. The U.S. apparently looks to build a leadership position in chips used for high-speed data processing, tapping Intel and other American companies. Tech giants envision new services using base stations. Amazon.com has teamed with Japanese telecom carrier KDDI for its Amazon Web Services to offer edge computing, processing data at locations physically closer to users' premises. Japan plots a comeback with 6G. The Communications Ministry unveiled ambitious goals under its Beyond 5G strategy released in April, seeking to capture a 30% global market share for base stations and other infrastructures, up from just 2% at present. Tokyo also wants 10% of relevant patents worldwide to come from Japanese companies. Samsung leads the 5G race as the holder of 8.9% of patents, followed by Huawei at 3.8% and Qualcomm at 7.4%. Japan's NTT Docomo ranks 6th with a 5.5% share, according to Cyber Creative Institute. Japanese telecom carriers are devising infrastructure ideas. Besides satellites, Docomo aims to set up base stations in rugged areas and elsewhere. SoftBank Corporation is pursuing what it calls the high-altitude platform station business, having unmanned aircraft send network connectively from the stratosphere. The problem may be that Japanese companies have focused on the domestic market alone. While the Japanese equipment makers that lack a track record in 5G will be able to gain leadership on 6G is questionable, said a senior executive at the telecom company.
NFL condemns racism, admits we were wrong not to listen to NFL player protests. National Football League Commissioner Roger Goodell admitted the league was wrong for failing to listen to players who protested social injustice, he said on Friday in a video. In his second statement released since the May 25th death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man killed by police in Minnesota, Goodell used a roughly 80-second recorded message not only to condemn the systemic oppression of black people, but also to admit fault for not listening to its players earlier. Goodell said he wants players to continue to speak out through protesting, supported the Black Lives Matter movement, and offered his participation. I personally protest with you and want to be part of the much-needed change in this country. Without black players, there would be no National Football League, Goodell said. Floyd died shortly after Minnesota police officer Derek Chauvin was recorded with his knee on Floyd's neck following his plea of being unable to breathe. The video footage caused an outbreak of protests throughout the country, renewing conversation about police brutality and social injustice. The NFL has come under fire since Floyd's death, as the image of Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck is being compared to former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem in 2016 to protest racism and oppression. The move sparked years of controversy, lawsuits, an eventual settlement, and a blown attempt to reconcile after Kaepernick was blackballed. Basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on Tuesday discussed the recent protests throughout the country following Floyd's death, the killing of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, and the February 23 shooting of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. Abdul-Jabbar said the NFL needs to prove to all of us that they mean what they say, following Goodell's first statement to address the systemic issues facing minorities. We have to listen to people who are suffering, Abdul-Jabbar said. He also called for law enforcement and companies to understand the problem facing blacks in America. Certain people among the ranks of police are racist or are afraid of people who don't look like them, Abdul-Jabbar said. I think all of us would serve this issue if we could make friends with someone who doesn't look like us. I think that is a key issue here, that too much of people's humanity and their right to be part of the American dream that's not recognized all the time, and that's very unfortunate.
Kimchi Lumumba's performance on Wishba sets record for most disliked on YouTube Philippines in 24 hours. The gloating song of the Campamila actress Kim Chi has set another record as the most disliked video on YouTube Philippines in less than 24 hours. It is a feat that no one in the Philippines has ever achieved, leading to the premiere of the video Wishpa's YouTube channel. Many Filipino netizens have already noticed their descent on the perceptual agony that the song has caused them. Kim Chi's crisis team has managed to turn the tables after bouncing back from a dark chapter with a new viral hit. On Instagram, Chiu shared that her new song, Bawa Lumambas, recorded more than 10 million views across all social media platforms in one day. The song is drawn from a viral statement of Chiu in defense of her home network ABS-CBN, which was then used to ridicule her for what she admitted was a poorly worded analogy with classroom rules. Admittedly, Kim Chi's song became viral, but not for the good reasons. People are watching it merely because they are curious as to what other stunt the embattled actress is up to. This became apparent in the comment section of a Wishbuzz video, where many Filipinos have voiced their sentiments against the actress' seemingly innate stupidity. 1% came here to listen to the song, 99% came here to check the dislike. It seems like the hate Kim Chui is getting out of this shallow stunt is warranted. People have also said that the song doesn't even qualify as an original Filipino music. As of this writing, the video has already garnered almost 500,000 dislikes on YouTube, and number continues to rise. Do you agree that this song is doing a disservice to all talented Filipino artists and the entire OPM industry? Some people are even calling this trash. We will perpetually gloat at the fact that while talented indie Filipino artists and musicians remained unnoticed, mainstream studios and media operators are giving this trash a much undeserved attention. But we shouldn't be surprised. This industry is monopolized by a few powerful people kissing each other's asses. What do you think about this song?
North Korea's Supreme Sister scolds human scum, jeopardizing deal with South. Kim Yo-Jong, the sister of North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, has called defectors human scum and mongrel dogs for flying hot air balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang propaganda across the border from the south. She has threatened to cancel a military deal with Seoul. South Korea may ban defectors from flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets into the north, officials said on Thursday, hours after leader Kim Jong-un's sister threatened to scrap a military agreement with Seoul. Kim Yo-jong, the influential younger sister and key advisor to the leader, issued the warning at a time when inter-Korean ties are in the deep freeze despite 3 summits in 2018 between her brother and Southern President Moon Jae-in, who has consistently been favorable to closer engagement with Pyongyang. But North Korean defectors and other activists have long flown balloons across the border carrying leaflets that criticize Kim over human rights abuses and his nuclear ambitions. The Supreme Sister does not approve. On May 31, I heard a report that so-called defectors from the north scattered hundreds of thousands of anti-democratic People's Republic of Korea leaflets into the areas on our side of the frontline areas, she writes in a statement published by the state-run Korean Central News Agency. What matters is that those human scum, hardly worth their value as human beings, had the temerity of faulting our supreme leadership and citing nuclear issue, she fumes, referring to initiatives by her brother and South Korea's leader to ease tensions on the peninsula. I wonder if the world knows what kind of riffraff those foolish defectors from the north are, she asks. It is the height of irony. Those fools are the almost illiterate wanted to talk about the nuclear issue, though they know no concept about it. This is like a shop boy near a temple chanting a sutra untaught, she says, referring to attempts by U.S. President Donald Trump, Seoul, and Kim Jong-un to scale down Pyongyang's nuclear program in exchange for the U.S. removing its nuclear arsenal from the region. Apart from being human scum, little short of wild animals who betrayed their own homeland, she calls the defectors mongrel dogs as they bark in where they should not. As this has to come to an end, she says, asking the South Korean authorities if they are ready to take the consequences of the damage done by these rubbish-like mongrel dogs who took no scruple to slander us. There will be serious consequences if Seoul doesn't comply, she threatens. Among those consequences, a possible cancellation of the 2000 North-South Joint Declaration, which was signed by Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, and then South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, while the 2018 Panmunjom Declaration for Peace and Prosperity on the Korean Peninsula, jointly signed by Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in, may be in danger too. Sister Kim angrily points out that this text specifically refers to ceasing all hostile acts against each other in every domain, including distribution of leaflets in the areas along the military demarcation line. Apart from canceling the agreements, she also threatens the complete withdrawal of North Korea from the Cross-Border Cooperation Project at the Kaesong Industrial Park and the closure of the North-South Joint Liaison Office. The effect was immediate. Just hours after the KCNA published Kim's statement, Seoul's Unification Ministry said the government was considering legislation to ban leaflet campaigns on the grounds they cause tension at the border. Any act that could pose a threat to the life and property of the residents in the border area should be stopped, said ministry spokesman Yo Sang-ki. The leaflet campaigns have been a thorny issue between the two Koreas, but enacting such a law could spark an outcry in the South over the right to freedom of expression. An official at the South Korean presidential office said the leaflets did more harm than good, adding the government would respond firmly to anything that damages national security. Yonhap news agency reported that mayors of towns in the border area had also requested the ministry to take steps and prevent defectors from flying leaflets into the north. And Kim himself? Meanwhile, Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un has disappeared for the third time in 2 months. When he was not shown in public after inspecting an assault plane group in the west of the country on April 12, speculation had it that he had died of heart problems in late April. But on May 2nd, KCNA published a slideshow of Kim opening a fertilizer factory looking puffy but not unhealthy. He then disappeared again without trace for another 3 weeks before being photographed chairing a session of the Military Commission on May 24, the last time he was seen in public. This week's sudden appearance of his sister adds fuel to speculation that she has been increasingly taking a leadership role in the country.
The Rock is third most popular presidential candidate after Biden and Trump. Can you smell what The Rock is cooking? With any luck, it'll be the US presidency. Because after Donald Trump and Joe Biden, Dwayne Johnson is the most popular candidate. In the wake of a powerful Black Lives Matter speech condemning the current president for his lack of leadership in the fallout of George Floyd's death, Johnson has re-emerged as people's champion for the Oval Office. Since being uploaded on Friday, June the 4th, the video has been viewed more than 13.5 million times on Instagram alone. From there, The Rock's words have galvanized supporters into pledging bets. Bookies now have The Rock as the third most backed candidate. In his Instagram, he said, "Where are you? Our country is crippled and on its knees, begging to be heard and pleading for change. Where is our compassionate leader, the leader who unifies and inspires our country at our most painful time when we need it the most? The leader who steps up and takes full accountability for our country and embraces every color in it? The leader who picks our country up off its knee and says, 'You have my word, we got this, and together change will happen.' Where are you? Because we are all here. Maybe one day the galvanizing leader will emerge. Either way, the process to change has already begun." According to Oddschecker, UK bookmakers noticed a surge in support for Johnson following his passionate speech on social media, despite not even running for president. Punters have been placing bets in spades, accounting for 3.34% of all wagers in the market. However, he's also priced at plus 40,000, which means Johnson has roughly a 0.2% chance of rock bottom. his way into the White House. Biden is the current favorite at minus 112, with Trump in second at plus 120. In the video, Johnson, who generally avoids voicing his views on politics online, addressed to voters, saying, "Where are you? Where is our leader at this time? This time when the country is down on its knees, begging, pleading, hurt, angry, frustrated, in pain. Begging and pleading with its arms out, just wanting to be heard. Begging and pleading and praying for change. Where is our passionate leader, who is going to step out to our country, who's down on his knees and extend a hand and say, 'You stand up. Stand up with me because I got you. I hear you. I'm listening to you. And you have my word that I'm going to do everything in my power until my dying day, my last breath, to do everything I can to create a change that is needed, to normalize equality because Black lives matter.' However, this doesn't necessarily put him in with the shot of winning, mainly because he's not in the race in the first place. As Johnson's popularity soared to astronomical levels back in 2018 and 2019, the notion of the Rock 2020 presidential campaign spread online. In 2017, he had told GQ that the prospect of ditching his position as the highest paid movie star in the world to run for office was a real possibility. The next year, he told Rolling Stone he hasn't ruled out making a bigger impact, but entering the 2020 race is incredibly unlikely. Johnson explained, "Republicans, Democrats, independents, mayors, strategists, you name it. Just soaking in and listening. Trying to learn as much as I possibly can. I entertain the thought, and thank you, I am so flattered by it. But I feel like the best thing I can do now is give me years. Let me go to work and learn. Maybe one day in the future, we'll see the jabroni-beating, pie-eating, trail-blazing, eyebrow-raising people's champ in the White House."
Security guard with knife wounds 39 at Chinese elementary school. A knife-wielding security guard went on a rampage at an elementary school in southeastern China on Thursday, leaving at least 39 people injured, officials said. The attack, which occurred at 8:30 a.m., left 37 students slightly wounded and 2 adults with serious injuries, according to an announcement by the local authorities in Kyung-hui County, in the southern province of Guangxi. None of the injuries were life-threatening, the announcement said. The security guard, a man named Li Xiaomin, who was said to be about 50 years old, was arrested, according to People's Daily, the official Communist Party mouthpiece. The adults injured were the school's principal and another security guard. No information was immediately released about a possible motive. A call to the Kangwoo Public Security Bureau went unanswered. Videos shared by Chinese media outlets showed children being carried out of the school, the central primary school of Wangfu Town, and rows of ambulances outside. 8 ambulances were called to transport the injured. School attacks are not uncommon in China. Last year, at least 75 students were injured in a spate of attacks at schools across the country, and at least 10 others died. In November, a man entered a preschool in Yunnan province and sprayed a corrosive chemical, injuring 51 students. He intended it as a revenge on society, official media reported at the time. In September, a man killed at least 8 students at an elementary school in Hubei province in central China, according to the police. And in January, a hammer attack at a Beijing elementary school left 20 children injured. In a response to the rash of attacks over the past decade, many schools began hiring security guards. On social media on Thursday, Several commenters expressed fear and dismay that this time a security guard had been the attacker. The children never would have thought that the uncle who normally protects their schoolyard would suddenly hurt them, one wrote. The frequency of school attacks has prompted a significant concern in China over the past decade, and state media outlets have published articles attributing the phenomenon to the stresses caused by a rapidly changing society. Private gun ownership is virtually forbidden in China, making mass shootings rare, but attackers have used bombs and axes in carrying out attacks on multiple people in addition to hammers and knives.
What will a return to school during the COVID-19 pandemic look like? What parents need to know about school reopening in the age of coronavirus. Life during the COVID-19 pandemic is difficult for parents and children alike. The return to school is an important and hopefully welcome step. But you and your children likely have many questions. Here's the latest information on what to expect and how you can support your young student. When and how will schools be reopened? We are slowly seeing an increasing number of children return to the classroom. More than 1 billion students are still out of school due to the nationwide school closures, but more than 70 countries have announced plans to reopen schools, and hundreds of millions of students have returned in recent weeks, as of early June 2020. Given the difficulty of the situation and variation across the globe, countries are in different stages regarding how and when they plan to reopen schools. These decisions will usually be made by national or state governments, often in discussion with local authorities. They will have to consider public health, the benefits and risks for education, and other factors. The best interest of every child should be at the center of these decisions, using the best available evidence, but exactly how this will look will vary from school to school. Is it safe for my child to go back to school? Schools should only be reopened when it is safe for students. Going back to school will likely look a little bit different from what you and your child were used to before. It is possible that schools may reopen for a period of time, and then a decision may be made to close them again temporarily, depending on the local context. Because of the evolving situation, authorities will need to be flexible and ready to adapt to ensure the safety of every child. Even if leaders in your area have not yet decided to reopen schools, it is crucial that they begin detailed planning now to help ensure students, teachers, and other staff are safe when they return and communities are confident in sending their students back to school. What precautions should the schools be taking to prevent COVID-19 virus from spreading? School reopenings should be consistent with each country's overall COVID-19 health response to protect students, staff, teachers, and their families. Some of the practical measures that schools can take include staggering the start and close of the school day, staggering meal times, moving classes to temporary spaces or outdoors, holding school in shifts to reduce class size. Water and hygiene facilities will be a crucial part of schools reopening safely. Administrators should look at opportunities to improve hygiene measures, including hand washing, respiratory etiquette, coughing and sneezing into the elbow, physical distancing measures, cleaning procedures for facilities, and safe food preparation practices. Administrative staff and teachers should also be trained on physical distancing and school hygiene practices. What questions should I be asking my child's teacher or school administrator? During such a worrying and disruptive time, it is natural to have a lot of questions. Some helpful ones you might want to ask include: what steps has the school taken to help ensure the safety of students? How would the school support the mental health of students and combat any stigma against people who have been sick? How would the school refer children who may need referrals for specialized support? Will any of the school's safeguarding and bullying policies change once school starts to reopen? How can I support school safety efforts, including through parent-teacher communities or other networks? What should I do if my child has fallen behind? Students around the world have shown just how much they want to keep learning. They have persisted with their lessons under difficult circumstances, with the support of their dedicated teachers and parents. But many children need extra support to catch up on their learning when schools reopen. Many schools are making plans for catch-up lessons to help bring students back to speed. This might include starting the year with refresher or remedial courses, after-school programs, or supplemental assignments to be done at home. Given the possibility that many schools may not open full-time or for all grades, schools may implement blended learning models, a mix of classroom instruction and remote education, self-study through take-home exercises, radio, TV, or online learning. Give extra support to your child at home by creating a routine around school and schoolwork. This can help if they are feeling restless and having trouble focusing. You may want to contact your child's teacher or school to ask questions and stay informed. Be sure to let them know if your child is facing specific challenges, like grief over family loss or heightened anxiety due to the pandemic. What should I do if my child is struggling to get back into school mode? Remember that your child will be dealing with the stress of the ongoing crisis differently from you. Create a supportive and nurturing environment and respond positively to questions and expressions of their feelings. Show support and let your child know that it is not only okay but normal to feel frustrated or anxious at times like this. Help your children to stick with their routines and make learning playful by incorporating it into everyday activities like cooking, family reading time, or games. Another option could be joining a parent or community group to connect with other parents who are going through the same experience to share tips and get support.
Shigeru Yokota's death, a reminder that time is running out on an abduction issue. The death Friday of Shigeru Yokota, the father of Megumi Yokota, who became the face of the abductees taken by North Korean agents in the 1970s and 1980s, will deal a devastating blow to the families who have been fighting for decades to get their loved ones back. Yokota, who was 87, was at the forefront of a movement to pressure the government into retrieving 17 confirmed abductees. Megumi was abducted in 1977 while walking home from school in a village on the coast of Niigata Prefecture when she was just 13. But with many of their family members getting old and the government distracted by the coronavirus pandemic, economic problems, and other concerns competing for lawmakers' attention, time is running out on the issue, which Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has often declared to be one of his highest priorities. Yokota's passing will likely draw increased interest for a brief time as people seek to learn why he was so critical to the movement and what he did, said Sandra Fahey, an expert on North Korean human rights who teaches at Sophia University in Tokyo. But Fahey said this was unlikely to bolster the movement and could instead encourage Tokyo to put the issue on the back burner. It will be easier for the Japanese government to take weaker action with protest voices diminishing, she said. In a joint statement Friday evening, Yokota's wife Saki and their sons Takuya and Tetsuya confirmed his death. Up until now, my husband and I worked hard to bring back Megumi, who was abducted to North Korea. We've received encouragement and support from many, including Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the statement said. But my husband succumbed before he got to see Megumi. We can't sort out our feelings. Other family members and former abductees mourn Yokota's passing. As the abductee rescue movement plods along, it was inevitable for a situation like this to emerge sooner or later. Shigui Izuka, who heads a group representing abductees' families, wrote Friday on Facebook, "We've taken an active part in the movement while being prepared for that. That's why we've been advocating for the victims' return as soon as possible, while family members are still healthy. It's deeply saddening." Hitomi Soga, who repatriated in 2002, read out a letter to Yokota at a news conference Saturday, saying she had saved her life. "I wish I could have helped him and Megumi reunite," Soga said. "I wish I could have helped them talk to each other, but now that's no longer possible. If I were to describe my feelings right now, they're sad, frustrated, and heartbroken. Many emotions are running inside my head." Yokota is the second high-profile death associated with the movement this year. In February, Kayoko Arimoto, the mother of Kiko Arimoto, was kidnapped by North Korean agents in 1983, died at the age of 94. The Yokotas became central figures in the movement. In 1997, they established a key group representing family members of abductees. The couple, along with other families, have persistently raised the issue and continued to pressure the government to facilitate the return of those still held in the isolated country. As part of an operation to train spies to master the Japanese language, North Korea embarked on a clandestine plan to spirit away Japanese nationals in the 1970s and early 1980s. In 2002, North Korea admitted it had snatched 13 Japanese, contradicting Tokyo's assessment that 17 were abducted. Then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il agreed to let 5 return but claimed that 8, including Megumi Yokota, had died and that 4 on Tokyo's list never set foot in the country. On Friday night, Shinzo Abe expressed his condolences for being unable to retrieve Megumi before Yokota's death, calling the news gut-wrenching and vowing to continue to press North Korea for the swift return of those abducted. Despite the Abe administration's prioritization of the abduction issue, little substantial progress has been made in recent years, with Tokyo and Pyongyang going back and forth on various investigations into the abductions and the North's demand to lift sanctions. The abduction issue has also taken a back seat in the international community as North Korea has continued to adopt an increasingly provocative stance by firing off improved missiles and carrying out nuclear tests. Upon a visit to Tokyo last year, U.S. President Donald Trump pledged to work with Abe to secure the remaining abductees' return. In June 2018, Trump became the first U.S. president to meet a North Korean leader when he sat down with Kim Jong-un for talks. The pair have since met 2 more times, stoking expectations that a deal on denuclearizing the Korean peninsula could be reached, and led to a breakthrough on the abduction issue as well. But after the initial fanfare, the talks have stalled, with Trump shifting his attention elsewhere. Abe himself seized on the momentum provided by the Trump-Kim meetings, making clear that he was ready to meet Kim without preconditions. Pyongyang, however, has largely ignored his appeals. Nevertheless, Japan will likely continue to press for the resolution of the abduction issue. Sophia University's Feihe said, "Nothing that one route could be for Tokyo to cooperate with Seoul on the issue." Given that the ROK has far greater numbers of nationals who have been abducted by the DPRK, they would do well to align with the ROK to strengthen the movement, she said, referring to South and North Korea by their formal names, the Republic of Korea and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, respectively. That, however, appears unlikely in the immediate future, as the two neighbors remain mired in the bitter standoff over historical issues and trade.
Coronavirus. WHO advises to wear masks in public areas. The World Health Organization has changed its advice on face masks, saying they should be worn in public where social distancing is not possible to help stop the spread of coronavirus. The global body said new information showed they could provide a barrier for potentially infectious droplets. Some countries already recommend or mandate face coverings in public. The WHO had previously argued there was not enough evidence to say that healthy people should wear masks. However, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom said on a Friday that in light of evolving evidence, the WHO advises that governments should encourage the general public to wear masks where there's widespread transmission and physical distancing is difficult, such as on public transport, in shops, and in other confined or crowded environments. The organization had always advised that medical face masks should be worn by people who are sick and by those caring for them. Globally, there have been 6.7 million confirmed coronavirus cases and nearly 400,000 deaths since the outbreak began late last year, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. What is the WHO's advice? The organization said its new guidance had been prompted by studies over recent weeks. Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, the WHO's technical lead expert on COVID-19, told Reuters news agency the recommendation was for people to wear a fabric mask, that is, a non-medical mask. Fabric masks should consist of at least 3 layers of different materials in order to be effective, the WHO says. However, those aged over 60 and with underlying health risks should wear medical masks in areas where there is community transmission. At the same time, the WHO addressed that face masks were just one of the range of tools that could be used to reduce the risk of transmission, and that they should not give people a false sense of protection. Masks on their own will not protect you from COVID-19, Dr. Tedros said. This is a big shift in the WHO's guidance on when the public should cover their faces. For months, the organization's experts stuck to the line that masks should encourage a false sense of security and would deprive medical professionals of badly needed protective equipment. Those arguments have not gone away, but at the same time, the WHO acknowledges that new evidence has emerged on the risk of transmission. It points to recent research that people can be highly infectious in the few days before they show symptoms, and that some people catch the virus but never show symptoms at all. So where distancing is not possible, such as on public transport, and in locations as varied as shops and refugee camps, it is suggested that faces are covered with homemade masks to avoid passing on the infection. Over 60s with underlying health conditions should go further, the WHO said, and wear medical-grade masks to give themselves better protection. In Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro threatened to pull the country out of the WHO unless it ceased to be a partisan political organization. The leader, who had initially dismissed the virus as little flu, has been critical on the lockdown policies recommended by the agency to tackle the spread of the disease. Last week, U.S. President Donald Trump said he would end ties with the WHO, saying it had failed to hold China, where the outbreak began, to account over coronavirus. In the UK, the government announced on Friday that hospital visitors and outpatients would be required to wear face coverings, and that hospital staff would have to wear medical masks, even if they were not in a clinical setting. The guidance will come into force on 15 June. As more businesses opened up and more pupils returned to school, Also on Friday, the UK became the second country to record more than 40,000 coronavirus-related deaths after the US. What are the latest key developments globally? The Court of Appeal in New South Wales, Australia, overturned a ban on the Black Lives Matter protest, which was imposed due to coronavirus concerns. Thousands flooded the streets of Sydney to commemorate African-American George Floyd, who died in U.S. police custody. In other news, the EU Commissioner for Home Affairs said member states should reopen their internal borders by end of June. Coronavirus is largely treated in those U.S. states that acted quickly to lock down, but is persisting and even rising sharply in states that locked down later and are already starting to ease restrictions, the Washington Post reports. California will allow film, television, and music production to restart on 12 June if conditions allowed. Portugal will start reopening its beaches later on Saturday. In Poland, gyms, swimming pools, and amusement parks will reopen. In Austria, the Vienna Philharmonic, one of the most celebrated orchestras in the world, gave its first live performance since the lockdown.
Guys, gals, everything in between, I hope you enjoyed tonight's news update. We'll be back again either tomorrow or the next night with more live news covering you and everybody else around the world. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Peace and love. Peace and love. It is all about humanity. For us, we need to stay safe. Times are tough. Protect the family. Remember, family first, nothing else matters. Work will always be there. Work will continue once we're gone, but the family will not. For now, Mavakaga.
It's all about humanity.
Out.
About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
This has been a Mavakaga production 2020, all rights reserved.
It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about